What Obama produced that night was maybe not magic, it was craft. He drew on rhetorical techniques as old as Julius Caesar, contrasting pairs, the rule of three, repetition, the puzzle solution structure. He borrowed thematically from King, Kennedy, and Reagan. The speech was extraordinary. It was also the product of weeks of grinding revision, fierce editorial battles, a line that got stolen, and a political operation that deliberately engineered one man's arrival on the national stage.
Tonight, we gather to affirm the greatness of our nation, summed up in a declaration made over 200 years ago. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
It's July 27th, 2004. Boston's Fleet Center is packed. Thousands of delegates on the floor, millions more watching at home, and one man standing alone behind a black curtain, waiting for his name to be called. He's not the presidential nominee. He's not even a U.S. senator. He's a 42-year-old state legislator from Illinois who 2 nights ago couldn't sleep and was pacing the hotel lobby at 1:30 a.m. in the morning. His rehearsals have been rough. He's never used a teleprompter. And the best line he ever wrote for the speech, they made him take it out so that's the John Kerry team, could use it instead. In 17 minutes, none of that is going to matter. I'm Charles Denyer, and this is Chasing Power, where we break down the moments, the scandals, the battles, and the players that shaped American politics, both past and present. Today, the night nobody knew his name, Barack Obama's 2004 DNC Keynote, and the speech that changed everything.
Welcome to Chasing Power, the path to Pennsylvania Avenue, a Charles Denyer Productions podcast.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
The audacity of hope. America, you've vindicated that hope.
And we will make America great again.
To understand why a 17-minute address by a politician almost nobody had heard of became one of the most consequential speeches in modern American history, you need to know 3 things. First, America was fracturing. It's the summer of 2004. George W. Bush is running for re-election at a moment when the country feels unsettled, and his own standing isn't nearly as strong as it once was. The early post-9/11 unity has faded, replaced by the growing unease over the war in Iraq, questions about intelligence failures, and a sense that the administration's direction is increasingly divisive. As the 2004 election approaches, Bush is no longer riding a wave of broad national support. He's facing a more skeptical and polarized electorate. Meanwhile, Democrats are struggling to project anything resembling a unified vision. John Kerry is their nominee, experienced, decorated, and deeply credentialed, yet, by most honest accounts, he's also quite boring. The party needs something, a jolt, a voice. They just don't know where it's going to come from. Second, the keynote slot at a national convention looks like opportunity, but history says otherwise. Mario Cuomo delivered a legendary 1984 speech and never reached the White House. Harold Ford Jr. impressed in 2000 for Al Gore, and then lost his Senate race. And Bill Clinton, while not technically the keynote speaker, that was Ann Richards in 1988, he rambled through a 32-minute speech, earning his biggest applause when he finally said, in conclusion, the pattern was crystal clear. No Democratic keynote speaker in the 20th century had gone on to win the presidency. That's the tradition Barack Obama stepped into. And third, almost nobody outside of Illinois knew who he was. The morning of his speech, the Philadelphia Daily News ran the headline, "Who the heck is this guy?" Convention chairman Bill Richardson, briefing reporters on the primetime lineup, drew a complete blank when he reached Obama's name and had to shout out to a nearby aide, "Who are they?" Obama admitted later he was totally surprised by the speaking invitation. The man who was about to electrify the nation was, at that moment, a footnote in his own party's convention program. So here's what happened. Obama had been working on the speech for weeks, writing the first draft in longhand on a yellow legal pad, mostly in Springfield, where the state legislature was locked in a budget impasse. At times, he would even hide in the men's room of the state capitol to find quiet moments. He jotted ideas on scraps of paper at 1 and 2 a.m. in the morning after legislative days that ran late into the night. When David Axelrod, who would become Obama's chief strategist, was vacationing in Italy, he received a fax draft, read each page, and handed it to his wife across the hotel room. He knew immediately, this is an incredible speech. But the road to the podium was not smooth. Obama had never worked with a teleprompter, never. He had no experience addressing a crowd this size, this loud, and this alive, while also performing for television cameras and the massive jumbotrons ahead at the same time. His rehearsals were uneven. Aides could see he had more in him. And then, in one of those rehearsal sessions, a Kerry speechwriter delivered the news. Obama would need to cut the climactic closing of his entire red state, blue state passage, because Kerry's own acceptance speech already had something too similar. The line Obama had originally written landed like this: "We are not red states and blue states. We're all Americans standing up together for the red, white, and blue." That was gone, taken out. Kerry's team took it. In the car afterward, Obama turned to Axelrod and, according to a campaign aide who was with him in that vehicle, told him, in considerably more colorful terms, exactly what he thought of that decision. He cooled down, he accepted it, and he walked onto that stage anyway. Shortly after 9 p.m., Obama strode to the podium. Curtis Mayfield's "Keep On Pushing" filled the hall. He stood at the microphone in silence for nearly 30 seconds, just taking in the moment, the crowd, the lights. He opened slowly, recounting his family's journey from Kenya to Kansas to Hawaii. His delivery was tentative. His hand gestures were stiff and methodical. Up in a skybox above the floor, his close friend Valerie Jarrett was digging her nails into her palms. And then something clicked. His shoulders settled, his voice dropped into its register. The energy of the crowd washed over him like a physical wave. Convention speechwriter Vicky Rideout, watching from the side of the stage, said she could see it happen in his body, a visible physical transformation. Another strategist, who had worked alongside Obama for years, stood on the floor and watched him shift into another gear entirely. His exact words: "He just went on fire." Before it was over, Barack Obama would be interrupted by applause 33 times. The reaction was instant and total. Observers from across the political spectrum called it an instant classic. Obama was drawing comparisons, deserved or not, to Martin Luther King Jr. and John F. Kennedy. At the after-party in Boston's downtown crossing, a crush of well-wishers practically engulfed him. The next morning, Gibbs walked behind Obama through the Fleet Center and watched the crowd react like a stadium wave rolling continuously through the hall. Before the speech, the idea of Obama running for president in 2008 would have been, in Gibbs' own words, laughable. He was going to enter the United States Senate ranked 99th out of 100 in seniority. After the speech, that conversation was already happening. And by the way, Robert Gibbs, who I've mentioned, is another chief architect and strategist as part of Obama's 2008 team, along with Axelrod and others. So Obama returned to Illinois and launched a 5-day, 1,600-mile barnstorming tour of the state. His team braced for the crowds to shrink back to their normal 100 or 200 people at most. Instead, more than 1,000 showed up in DeKalb, the heart of Republican House Speaker Denny Haster's congressional district, deep enemy territory for any Democrat. Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois traveled with Obama on part of that tour. And watching the crowds erupt, Durbin thought to himself, this is no longer about Barack Obama running for the Senate. This is something much bigger. Obama would go on to win his Senate race that November with a staggering 70% of the vote. Senator Dick Durbin later reflected on what that speech had set in motion. His verdict was direct. Without that Boston speech, there's a question whether Barack Obama would be running for president today. His public image changed because of that speech. Valerie Jarrett, who had known Obama for years and watched the whole thing from that skybox with her nails pressed into her hands, put it even more simply, it changed his life. On a bitterly cold February morning in 2007, Barack Obama stood in front of the old state capitol in Springfield, where Abraham Lincoln had once risen to national prominence, and officially declared his candidacy for President of the United States. More than 15,000 shivering supporters turned out to hear him. Now, not everyone was swept away. Conservative commentator Ann Coulter dismissed the widespread praise for Obama's eloquence as a product of, in her own words, white guilt, and called his speeches a run-on string of sophomoric Hallmark bromides. And Ted McClelland, a Chicago journalist who had covered Obama's failed 2000 congressional race remembered a very different version of the man. Stiff and wonkish, what he called a resume in search of an office, lines that would bring crowds to their feet that had bombed completely just 4 years earlier. The scholars and linguists who studied the speech make a more substantive point. What Obama produced that night was maybe not magic, it was craft. He drew on rhetorical techniques as old as Julius Caesar, contrasting pairs, the rule of three, repetition, the puzzle solution structure. He borrowed thematically from King, Kennedy, and Reagan. Also, he had road tested most of the material on the Illinois campaign trail for months before he ever set foot in that convention hall. The speech was extraordinary, no question about it. It was also the product of weeks of grinding revision, fierce editorial battles, a line that got stolen, and a political operation that deliberately engineered one man's arrival on the national stage. Here's the detail that should stop you cold, if you're a Democrat. For an entire century, 100 years of Democratic national conventions, not a single keynote speaker had ever gone on to win the presidency. Not Cuomo, not Jordan, not Ann Richards, not any of them. It had become something close to a curse. Give the keynote and say goodbye to your political dreams. And yet, 4 years after standing at that podium as a state senator that most of America couldn't name, 4 years after the Philadelphia Daily News asked, "Who the heck is this guy?" Barack Obama was sworn in as the 44th president of the United States of America. He broke a streak that had held for a century. And that line that Kerry's team made him cut, the one that ended with, "We're all Americans standing up together for the red, white, and blue," he never needed it. What he kept was more than enough. Sometimes what gets taken out makes everything that remains more powerful. If you want to go deeper on the politics of presidential convention moments and the figures who shaped American political history, there's plenty more ahead in the Chasing Power archive. Next time on Chasing Power, another politician, another pivotal moment, another convention.
I love those hockey moms. You know, they say the difference between a hockey mom and a pit bull? Lipstick.
Sarah Palin and the 2008 race. I'm Charles Denyer. Thanks for Chasing Power with me.
All opinions expressed are those of the host and do not reflect the official positions of any political organization, government agency, or private institution. This podcast is for news reporting, commentary, and criticism. We use excerpts, clips, and quotations from political events and other copyrighted works under the Fair Use Doctrine. All rights in those works remain with their respective owners. The views expressed are our own and do not represent any other entity.